Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to our monthly member meetup. This is the Slow Flowers member meetup that we usually hold on the second Friday of every month. Because of Mother's Day, we bumped it out a week. I hope that means everyone has slightly recovered from Mother's Day and has had a very enjoyable floral holiday. I've heard great reports from most people who had really excellent seasons. Obviously here in the Pacific Northwest, things like peonies cooperated and bloomed for Mother's Day. That doesn't always happen. So anyway, welcome. We have a wonderful event today, conversation with two of our keynote speakers for who will be showcased at the Slow Flowers Summit next month. And we're just going to have a conversation with them, get a little preview of what they're going to share, have a chance for our audience to ask questions, and get some intel and insights and expertise from Lennie Larkin of B-Side Farm and also Amy Balsters of the Floral Coach. Go ahead and introduce Lennie and have a conversation with her. And then if you have any questions, comments, follow up to something she said, please put it in the chat. And we'll make sure that we ask that. Either Tonali or I will do that. Let me pause and introduce our team. Nisha Blancas is here, our social media manager of Fetching Social Media. And you saw all her wonderful social media posts this week about our meetup. And Tonali Gruder of Salty Acres Farm, our membership manager. And Tonali is available to help anybody with any membership questions. She's been doing some really fun surprise upgrades for our premium members, like souping up their member page and surprising people. Kind of on, you call it an anniversary party gift, right, Tonali?
It's so great to be able to celebrate our members. I mean, really, it's all about you guys. I came to Slow Flowers as a member, so I know how much it means to just have that kinship and have a cheerleader in your corner. And I want to be your cheerleader.
I love it. Thanks. And Karen Thornton is our operations and events manager. She's behind the scenes. You just see her somehow behind a photo of me, but she's running the deck in the back. We do have two giveaways today for those who are attending. So please, if you're identified in a weird way on your account, add your name or put your hello in the chat so Nisha can gather your name for the drawing, and we'll talk about that at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure everyone knows that the Slow Flower Summit is coming right up. It's a Monday and Tuesday, the last Monday and Tuesday in June. It's June 26th and 27th. It will be here in the Pacific Northwest, hosted by the Bellevue Botanical Garden. We already have over 100 people registered to come. We have a few more spaces, so we're really excited about that. It's just going to be wonderful. And so today's just a little preview to tease everybody about what's going on, what you might learn and hear from if you come for the whole event, which we hope you do. And we're going to go ahead and introduce Lennie Larkin of B-Side Farm and make sure everyone knows a little bit about Lennie. I think Karen's going to put her up on the screen. Hi, Lennie. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
So, Lennie, I'm going to just share your bio. B-Side Farm and Floral Design is now based in Oregon, just outside of Portland. Lennie is a flower farmer, a researcher, a farm business coach, and her primary goal is to help farmers keep farming. I love that. Lennie started B-Side Farm and Floral Design in 2013. This is your 10-year anniversary. It's amazing.
I know. Who would have thought?
You served the Bay Area with unique flowers and bouquets for a decade before recently relocating to a farm just outside of Portland, as I said. Lennie has served on the board of ASCFG, the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, for 7 years, both as a regional director and a board treasurer. That might need to be updated, Lennie. Are you still on the board?
I am not. You're right. I seem to be 6 months behind in everything. So no, I'm off the board now this year.
Well, we said has served on the board. I'll edit that.
And just to note, they didn't kick me off. My term was over.
Right. There are term limits in some places, right? And you've in the past taught horticulture at the junior college, Santa Rosa Junior College, and you conduct grant-funded research on the cost of production for cut flower crops, which is one of the things we were intrigued by in asking you to come speak at the summit, not to mention the fact that you are a longtime Slow Flowers member. So I want to just welcome you. I know you're going to talk about your forthcoming book, Flower Farming for Profit, which will be published this fall, which is amazing. And I'm just going to hand it over to you and share a little bit about yourself, what's going on. And then of course, we're going to have questions from folks who are in the room.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, and your amazing team. Yeah, it's great to be here. You've been such a supporter of mine personally and professionally over the years, in addition to everything you do for the rest of us. So I just want to appreciate that. You've connected me to so many wonderful people in so many different ways, you know. I was actually, it's funny getting ready for this talk and then for the summit, I've had a fun little trip down memory lane where I was thinking about, I think it was the first Slow Flower Summit in Seattle that I was able to come to. And
that's right.
That marked my first. It's funny, my journey with Slow Flowers has marked a few important kind of turning points. That was my first summer vacation that I took from my farm. And I remember I flew up, I was in California at the time. I flew up and I rented a car and I came to the summit. I went to visit, my good friend Erin at Raindrop Farm. I went to visit Jello Mold and Vivian Larson and all these wonderful Pacific Northwest growers who were kind enough to kind of hang out with me and walk me around their farms. I got to go to the wholesale market for the first time. And then I drove up to Vancouver Island and spent a couple of days by myself. And at the time, this was revolutionary, like feeling like I was at a point in my business where I could take a little vacation in the summer. So I didn't plan to talk about that, but I couldn't help but think about it. And now, luckily, I feel like I've reached the point in my life and my business where that wouldn't be unheard of. But at the time it was just huge. So it was such fond memories.
Wow. I didn't know that was sort of a radical runaway from home kind of moment for you. I will say it was great to have you there. And you came also as kind of a reporter. You covered the summit for the Cut Flower Quarterly, which was really great to have your interpretations of our first ever event. We've grown up a little bit too.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. And the other quick funny thing is that your incredible social media coordinator had found a clip of maybe the first time I was on your podcast. I think I've been on a few times.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And so I heard in Instagram there just a clip of me talking from years ago. And I think I was talking about the first ASCFG talk I gave, which was at the San Jose meetup in like 2015, 2014, something like that. And I was just babbling on your podcast about it. And funny enough, talking about that experience is actually part of the introduction of my book. And so I was just editing that introduction yesterday. And it's funny, not that there's any big giveaway, but I won't tell the whole story. But basically what I'm saying in the introduction to my book is like, it was great that I was up there as an enthusiastic young flower farmer giving a talk at the ASCFG, talking about my plans for this season. And I had already had been an experienced farmer. I had managed another farm, but this was the start of my business. But my introduction is all about how I really left out all the stuff that is now important to me. And I think important to the longevity of our farms, which is making a profit and not to be any kind of greedy capitalist or anything, just in order to stay in business, in order to keep doing what we love, in order to keep having enthusiasm about your life and your livelihood. And so now all I talk about is money and profitability and crop costing and business sustainability. And that didn't even enter my talk at that point. So I was just laughing about that, hearing that clip from the podcast, because it's such a 180, but it was the beginning. So,
well, Nisha, you want to add anything? Because you were commenting on that when you found that clip and how young and what a beginner Lennie sounded like.
I thought it was awesome. I was listening to the podcast. So yes, it was like one of the very first podcast episodes, and just hearing how you were interacting, and it just sounded like you were starting so small. And the way you said it, you're like, I'm giving this presentation, I'm bringing enthusiasm, but I'm also like speaking to a room of people that I look up to as well. And, I don't have that much experience, but I have a lot of enthusiasm of where I'm going, and I'm going to share what, I have to offer. And it was just pretty cool to hear that. And then knowing that you're going to be speaking at the summit this year, I'm like, I'm excited to hear like the growth between the two, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's so funny. Thank you for that. I know. Hopefully it won't be like now the return of the haggard grower 10 years later or whatever.
No.
But yeah, that was wonderful. And it's funny that that's what I focused on in the beginning of my book to kind of lead into it, which by the way is going to be published in early next year instead of the fall, which
Okay.
Kelsey Green has been so wonderful to work with. And I can't, obviously we all love their books. They published Lynn Basinski's book and The Lean Farmer, all Richard Wiswell's book, all these wonderful books. And I feel so lucky to be in their lineup now.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, it will
awesome.
come out in the spring because I needed a little more time I moved to Oregon and decided to write a book at the same time. So it was it's a wild year,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, I'm going to stop talking and let you, I know you have some things to say. We've got plenty of time. We've got at least another 20 minutes. So is that good for you?
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'll I hope not to not ramble too much. And then when it's appropriate to see if there have been questions or
I'll pop in. Yeah. Sounds great.
Great. Thanks. So yeah, as I said, I've been well, first I'll talk about my move a little bit, and then I'll talk about what my work has been focusing on recently. They're kind of two separate topics. And the first is just the reality of starting over as an experienced farmer in a new location in a new market. So, I'd been growing in California. I learned how to farm in California since doing the UCSC CASFIS Santa Cruz program in 2011, I believe. So, and then from there, managed a vegetable farm, started my farm. And so that's what I knew. And I kind of had a slow build with my business over the years with B-Side, first doing, sales to florists, then venturing into weddings and really diving into weddings and perfecting my systems with weddings, and eventually being really proud of the wedding business that I built. And then starting, partly during to COVID, of course, starting to do more one-off bouquet deliveries, kind of this like elevated bouquet, and then built a roadside farm stand that ended up doing really well for me. So through sticking with that farm stand over the years and advertising it and finding the best location for it, which wasn't right at my farm, it ended up being the most kind of worthwhile, profitable, fun thing I've ever done in my business, which I think is so funny because I talk so much. I work with so many growers and talk about helping them find their specific niche in the marketplace. And it turns out mine was like a really simple roadside stand, but it worked for me and I loved it. So we moved to Oregon just this past November, so just a few months ago. And we kind of were priced out of living in California. It was time to buy land. My partner Matt and I were just desperate to have our own land. I had leased so many fields over the years. And we finally were in the position to buy something, based in no small part to a lot of consulting that I did outside of the farm with estates and home gardeners in Sonoma County. So like my farm was sustainable and profitable, but I feel it's important to say that I would not have been able to buy land in today's market just based off of my farm, however successful or sustainable. So I, was able to take on other work at the time, hire other people to do what I used to do at the farm, and they continue to teach, continue to consult, and do all these other things. So we were in the place to buy land, but not really in California. It would have been such a struggle to afford a mortgage in California and continue to live there. So I'm getting off track, but so we moved up to Oregon. I have family up here. I went to college up here. I know all the growers up here and I love them. And so we were able to kind of scrape by and find a place just outside of Portland. So I am starting over and it's a wild ride. I'm trying to act as if a lot, and do the things that I advise new growers to do. I think it's a unique position of being such an experienced farmer and business owner, but in a completely new market. So I know how to grow things. I know how to sell them. I know what to do with my fields. These are things that took me so long to figure out at my first farm, which actually took place over a number of different fields and a number of different towns over the years. But building the marketplace is, it's a slow process. And I'm hoping that with my know-how, I can jump in and build it more quickly than like the 10 years it took me to build it in California, but it will take a while. And so we're luckily we're putting in cover crop and we're building the soil, so we don't have that much growing yet, but we're doing a CSA program, and we're doing some sales to florists, and I worked with Mayash a bit and Zupans a bit, and just selling here and there as we build up. So this move has taken place at the same time as me really diving into all this research I've been wanting to do for so long, which is related to the book, but a little bit different too. So I've been working on the book, Flower Farming for Profit. I think the subtitle is going to be a complete guide to growing your farm business. So that's the idea behind the book. It's a business book. It's a accessible, friendly business book. But we have so many great books out there teaching us how to grow flowers. So this isn't talking about soil fertility or when to pinch. It's talking about some of the stuff as relates to efficiency of growing your crops in the field, but how to think about the business, how to evaluate the options in front of you, who to sell to, what to grow, based on what will help you create sustainability in your business. That's been really fun. Part of it is about kind of enterprise budgets or crop costing. So basically figuring out how much it costs you to grow the different crops you grow, and therefore figuring out ultimately which ones are profitable, which ones are adding to the profitability of your business, and which ones are being carried by the other ones. So many of us, when we start out farming, I can't tell you all of the, if we were all here in person, I would say, let's see a raise of hands to those of you who boast on your website that you grow 75 different varieties of flowers. The goal seemed to be to grow as much variety as we can. And I know there's great advice out there to slim down, which is right in line with my advice, which is always telling farmers to grow less, to specialize. So we're just so busy, and the farm is such a dynamic organism that it's hard to view it as what it is, which is a small business. And turning off my ringer here. It's a small business, and we need to strip away all those compounding factors that make it really challenging to evaluate the opportunities we have ahead of us as small business owners. I was approached by this restaurant to do bud vases for their 75 tables. Is that going to be a good opportunity for me? I had the opportunity to sell flowers consignment at this store. Is that going to be worthwhile for me? Should I put in 2,000 peonies just because there's a sale on peonies? Just all these things that come flying our way that I think we're too overwhelmed, especially in the height of the farming season, to systematically review the opportunities that we have ahead of us, peel everything else away, and evaluate them based on not just like our hunch, our feeling, or our level of energy at the time, but based on numbers, even if it's some data and some estimates, based on numbers, based on reason, based on these things, these skills that I think we all have intuitively, but we don't always exercise them on our farms because it's hard, So that's what my book is about. And that's what this research has been about too. So I've gotten 2 grants through Western SARE, which is wonderful. And I highly recommend. Western SARE has these farmer and rancher grants. So they are smaller grants. Are they 25,000? I think that's no small amount of money, of course, but these are grants that allow farmers to do research on their farms or collaboratively with other farms. So I got my first grant through them to do research on cost of production, and worked with Tanya Murray at Oregon Tilth, who's been wonderful. And she's now advising me on my second grant too, which is a larger professional and producer grant. Sounds like a lot of jargon. I apologize. So basically they let me apply for this second grant as a agricultural professional rather than a farmer. And usually they are reserved for someone who's working in extension or working for a university, but they were like, okay, we see what you're doing. This isn't research on your farm. This is, as Deborah said, I think in a promo, this is a little like nerdier. This is nerdier stuff. So I feel so excited to be working with these different growers. So I've been working with 4 growers last year, 11 this year who were in this grant, going through this program that was created at Oregon Tilth and the OSU Center for Small Farms. and going through and studying crops grown on these different farms. So I'm kind of the project manager for this project. That relates to, the name of my talk at the Slow Flowers conference. Look at that segue, which is the flower dollar. So yeah. This is a more kind of public facing version of me trying to pick apart the true costs of our flower farm. And labor is this huge, it's all about labor. It's all about where and how we spend our time. Our inputs are expensive too, of course, but farms are made or broken on labor. And so a few years ago at my farm stand, I made a simple chalkboard drawing of a pie chart showing the different costs associated with my farm. And over the years, I tweaked that according to the feedback I got from my customers. And so this is showing, maybe only 25 or 35% of the gross sales that come into a farm end up in the farmer's pocket as profit. And we have all these other administration costs. We have farm costs. We have all this other stuff, cost of goods sold, right? And so I ended up making this into a poster and selling it to flower farmers and some florists too across the country who were interested in having a way of showing their customers or their potential customers a little bit behind the scenes of their life as a flower farmer. And what I really liked about this approach is that it wasn't complaining. I see a lot of kind of ad hoc marketing out there by busy farmers like me. Here's the flower dial poster. Busy farmers like me who, when we want to try to let our customers know what our lives are like, what we do is we complain or we make ourselves a martyr. I've been working 20 hours for this Mother's Day, and I hope you guys buy these bouquets or, and I'm guilty of this too, but, and I'm no marketing expert whatsoever. But the first, people don't want to buy from someone who's trying to guilt them or sounding overwhelmed or sounding exhausted. People want to buy from brands that make them feel good, So this was my way of, without complaining or trying to make my customers feel bad for me, I was saying like, we don't make much money as flower farmers, and here's why. And more specifically, here's where your money goes when you support me. So
you want to just walk us through like this pie chart. Right. This is so charming too. It's very, user friendly, like anybody can read this and understand it.
Thank you. I'm so bad at graphic design, so this took me forever. And we ended up doing a photograph with Molly DeCoudre, who's doing the photography for my book. And she's just wonderful. She's a Bay Area photographer. So we did a little pie chart with flower petals. I had forgotten. I went down to her studio in San Francisco to have a meeting about the book. We were going to take a quick photo for this. And I had forgotten to bring all the bags of flower petals I had carefully picked at my farm. So I ran down the street to Buy-Right, a supermarket that I'd sold to for years, flowers, and bought a bouquet and picked it apart. So these are probably full belly farm flowers.
Oh, fun.
So this is a breakdown. And of course, these are average numbers based on kind of a combination of my farm and then a lot of smaller farms that I work with. So it's not my farm to a T. It's typically like a micro farm where someone is doing most of the work themselves. And I'll walk you through the title. So here we have, let's start with the top right, employee payroll. So this is saying maybe 20% of every dollar spent in a farm is spent on employee payroll. Again, this can go up to 45% or down to, or 45 cents, let's say, down to 20%. I'd say first, the typical small farm is going to be probably more like 30 to 35%, but a lot of the small micro farms, farmer florists, that payroll expense is going to be lower because they're doing most of the work themselves. I will say too, that's why a lot of these small businesses can look better on paper, but I would assert that a lot of them are not truly accounting for all their labor, and they haven't professionalized enough to yet pay for all the services they're going to need in the future, bookkeeping and all that. So I will say that. Land costs, 15 cents. Farm supplies, 10 cents, 15 cents. God, my eyes are bad. Admin costs, 15 cents. Profit. And profit, of course, is kind of a nebulous topic. At first this said net income, but then I heard customers saying in my camera at the farm stand, well, where's the profit? So I changed around the language to what customers were more likely to use. Yeah. And of course, what I was just talking about the true cost of your farm, I think the real change is here in this profit rather than the payroll. I I know some farmers who are saying, oh, well, I bring in 50% net profit. And, I know that's true for a few farms, but I would say we haven't seen many examples of farms with that high level of profit that have existed over the long term. So I think there's something to be said for a farm that brings in, 30% net profit, but the farm owner accounts for all of their time, pays for all the services they need, and is able to have some sort of a work-life balance. So I think there's, it's not always about the highest net profit. Also, if we're, looking for a net high profit in exchange for not treating our soil right, not paying our employees well, like that's never the goal. The goal is never to cut in on these high morals that we have. So I'll stop talking, Deborah, to see what else you want to say about this. I could go on forever.
No, this is great. So we're going to have a drawing among our attendees, and one lucky person is going to receive this poster. We'll order it from Lennie and have it sent to you. But Lennie, you're going to have copies of this to share at the to sell at the summit as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's been great to see people put this in their farm stands all across the country. It's been really, really fun. And it doesn't say this is B-side farm. It says this is a small farm. So, well,
that's, I see. So it's really applicable. I guess my question is, what really got you thinking in this way? Was it the classic, why do flowers cost so much kind of question that you do hear direct from customer sales or from florists?
Yeah, I think part of it was me to specifically the poster. I wanted to say to customers, yeah, I know my flowers are expensive, but this is why, because I think we don't understand industries that we're not involved in, right? I don't think anyone would ever know how little money we make as farmers, or how little money florists make for that matter. Or wholesalers, none of us make that much money. I think we can do a lot better than people have done in the past. I think we can be smart and hardworking and learn from all our mentors at what's worked for them, and hope to, translate those skills into the modern era. But it was just wanting to show behind the scenes a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been working with a lot of flower farmers over the winter. And I wanted to say this too, that I've been teaching I've taught workshops forever, but now my workshops specifically relate to business topics. And just what I've been babbling about is about growing your farm strategically. And that doesn't always mean scaling up your farm. It often means consolidating your effort. So I've been teaching this one specific day-long business retreat. And I have one coming up in July, and I threw up on my website this morning a 30% discount for Slow Flowers members. So if anyone's watching this and wants to sign up within the week I have it, you can get 30% off. It's a big workshop. It's almost all day, but I've taught it to 45 growers this winter, and I've gotten such fabulous responses. We talk about how to evaluate your sales channels, how to evaluate your crops. It's been, I think, my favorite thing I've ever done, and I've gotten great feedback. And so if anyone is looking to kind of work with a consultant like me, but in a group setting, I would say, and not have a one-on-one experience, then it's a great
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you so much for that, Lennie. And we'll share that with everyone in the follow-up when we send the video out. We don't really have any other questions, but Tiffany Anderson of Earth and Seeds said she's so excited for your book. She feels like she's been doing all this work and numbers evaluation, but mostly solo by herself with a bookkeeper. So more institutional knowledge will be so valuable. And I think that's what you're saying. Is like, the more you said you're working with all these farms, the more you can aggregate this intel, you can come up with some, I guess, best practices and guidelines for people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And some benchmarks, what could we hope to, what standards should we set for the crops we grow on our farm? How much money should they be making us? And it's different for everyone. And also, just to say, at the Slow Flowers Summit, I won't be diving into this nitty-gritty stuff without having beautiful flowers there too. So I'll be,
our audience.
I know, exactly. So this is just a CSA bouquet that is going out. This actually is so girly. I can't even believe it. Pink and purple are not usually my favorites, but it's what we had. So at the Slow Flowers Summit, I'll be making a centerpiece and specifically talking through how I would cost out that centerpiece and make a recipe kind of on the fly and make sure I am charging my markups and accounting for my time and my flowers and my labor. So it'll be fun. You know, I'll be talking a little bit about design, but more about the sustainability of your business based on how much you're charging, what you're using, your process.
Well, Lennie, I'm excited about that because I really, you know, we have a true even balance between people who call themselves florists or possibly farmer florists and people who are growers. And I feel like we're very design forward, and your talk will be instructive for designers and florists as well, because they're up against the same issues of understanding the cost of every stem. And Amy's going to talk about that too. So we're going to have a good, you know, tough love conversation with people to say, yes, this is a beautiful lifestyle, but are we sustaining our, you know, our businesses and our families? And like you said, work-life balance. Before we wrap up, Lennie, I have one question just to finish on. I don't know if other people are thinking about it, but you made the comment about how when people get started, they want to have, you know, 75 or 100 varieties that they grow on their farm. And it's, of course, you want all the colors of in the crayon box, right? Can you give us an example where you had to like kill one of your darlings and like just say, I love this, but it's not profitable? And then what did you replace it with?
Yeah. Interesting. I have a really strong spring bouquet program, specifically in California. Now I have a strong bouquet program without all the customers yet. We'll get there. But so I really narrowed it down to the flowers that would fulfill each kind of design component for me. So for example, Orlaya here, Orlaya is my early spring filler. It's not Orlaya and Bupleurum and Ami. It's like one. And you know, I heard someone say recently that, well, you need to have a big variety for your bouquets to keep your customers happy. You don't, you know, my customers never get the same bouquet every week. It's always different colors, slightly different, but you know, I grow foxglove rather than foxglove and snaps and stock. Maybe I grow some stock for the fragrance, and a few focals. So I feel like at each point in the season, especially if you're a farmer florist, and making bouquets rather than just selling wholesale, which, you know, I'd say having one or two crops that fulfill the focal, the line flower, the filler, maybe the foliage, at each point in the season or each month, you could look at it that way, is all you need. You don't need 5 options, and you'll get better at those specific crops. And then the ones you do grow well, and if there's demand for them, you can scale up that crop and sell that on a wholesale level. You know, you don't need to grow everything.
Oh, great advice. That is so helpful. Lennie, we'll see you in a month, and literally like we're about 5 weeks out. So thank you so much for this. We might have time for questions at the end. Lennie's going to hang around. So, you know, we'll be monitoring the chat. And I want to just now take a minute to introduce Amy Balsters. And I'm so thrilled that Amy's here today too. It's nice to have the two of you because you're, you know, kind of covering all bases for us. Hi, Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm also suffering from allergies, so I might mute during a cough in the mid-cough.
Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Well, Amy her brand is the Floral Coach. A lot of people know her as the Floral Coach on Instagram. Classically trained, award-winning floral design educator with vast industry experience spanning 2 decades in retail forestry. She started when she was about 11, I think, and in weddings and special events. Amy specializes in teaching the romantic-inspired, loose and airy style, and she's the creator of Bouquet Boot Camp, which we're going to hear about, a comprehensive design course and hands-on workshop. Amy has taught all over the U.S. She's trained thousands of florists how to design more confidently and efficiently using professional design techniques. And surprisingly, she's never taught in the Northwest. And is that correct?
I have taught in Portland.
Oh, Portland. Oh, that's right. You did. You taught in Portland. I remember that. So in the Seattle area, we're getting you for the first time. So thank you for that. It looks like Karen has put your social media up on the screen. So are you on the road right now, or are you at home in Virginia?
I'm actually still home, but I'm just packing up to leave again. So,
oh my gosh. Well, tell us how has this whole, you know, the Floral Coach is sort of your personality, but your main focus are these very strategic workshops that are 1 to 2 or 3 days. And that's sort of taken over your life right now in terms of how you're spending your time as a florist, right?
Yes. Yes. Well
Good.
said.
Okay, I'm gonna pop out. I will just have to say one thing. The reason I'm so fast, Amy and I have known each other. I guess you came to the Slow Flower Summit in 2018 in DC, and that's when we first met. And Amy also attended the Slow Flower Summit in 2021 when it was at Filoli. And the joke is, and we talked about this on the podcast, at the end of the second day, there were a lot of leftover flowers, and Amy kind of had this spontaneous pop-up bouquet DIY with like teaching people how to do spiral bouquets. And I watched it from afar, and I'm like, okay, she's such a natural. We'll get her into the summit at some point. So you helped clean up all our leftovers, but you did something really, really helpful and instructive. And a lot of people went home with a new skill that they didn't know they were going to get.
Bonus. I can't help myself. It's a compulsion, really.
Yeah, that's funny. You see like whatever, 30 stems and you know what to do with them.
Get this done. Yeah, I sat at that table I sat at a table at Slow Flowers with a designer who has been designing many years, and she just really has always felt frustrated by the spiral technique and said, I just don't really get it. And I said, well, I could just show you like in 5 minutes with some leftovers. And she was like, okay, a little kind of skeptical, a little bit like, I don't know about that. And so I showed her just quickly, and all of a sudden it was like this tipping point where people were like, what are you doing? And we had like 30 people where I was just giving a very impromptu bouquet making class. And it was such a fun highlight. So thanks for letting me commandeer the leftover pile.
Hey, you know what? We never want to waste a flower. No, it was great. And then I got to take your workshop at Fun and Sun last August. And when I left, I was like, I know she can do this in an hour. I know that people spend lots of money to take the full day or the 2-day. And I encourage you to check that out. But if you're coming to the summit, it's a lot of information, a little bit of information about a lot of topics. And that's where I'm so grateful you said yes and that you would come. And so I'm going to just maybe pop off the screen here and let Karen put you on highlight, and maybe you can just share, a little bit about where you're at and what you're seeing as sort of opportunities for people.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. It's a huge honor to be a speaker at Slow Flowers. So I'm really excited, and I've never been to Seattle before, or the state of Washington. So I am like really excited to visit. So like Deborah mentioned, I'm a classically trained florist. I went to floral design school 21 years ago and got my training from some incredible designers who, really showed me the ropes of fundamental floristry. And I have done a lot of things between that time and now. But what I really focus on is the fundamentals. And I think for people who know the fundamentals, that can sound sort of like, yeah, I've already done that. But what's so fascinating to me about design is that no matter the styles that change or the trends that change, or even the way we do our businesses changes, the fundamentals are always there to serve us. And when I use that word, I'm really specifically talking about the principles and elements of design. They're not dated, they're not tired, they're not old, they're constantly serving us. And I think there's two key parts to being a successful designer. I think there's the fundamental mechanics that we use and the fundamental principles and elements of design. And my hope is to bridge those together for designers so that they can work profitably and efficiently, but also stylistically on trend with what's happening. The design world changes. It's changed a lot since I got into flowers. I had to evolve as a designer. I wasn't naturally good at gathered, loose, and airy. I came up in the early 2000s with tight round balls, and it was very difficult for me to change my work to have this kind of loose, fluid movement. I always ended up with this like ball with, 2 arms sticking out. You can relate, I'm sure, if you had to make something and it's like, so this has really been an evolution for me of going back to the principles of design and really fine-tuning my ability to teach them in an effective way to designers who are new or very established designers. And so for the last 5 years, this has been my primary focus, is how do I teach designers how to make more money through a very process-driven approach to design. So Deborah, I was kind of explaining to Deborah, I've been to so many workshops, so many conferences. I've spent so much money. I've constantly, taking on inputs of, I want to learn from this person. I want to read this book. I want to go to their workshop. And oftentimes in a lot of design presentations, I see a lot of beautiful, like performance art, is what I sort of call it, where you have a really talented designer who can make beautiful things, but they maybe haven't quite drilled down to understand why it's actually successful. Why did they choose that shape? Why did they put that there? Why did they layer that a certain way? And so my objective as a teacher is to really unpack that process and to show the steps so that a designer can watch this and go home and actually apply it immediately to their work. That's sort of my metric on being a successful teacher. And I think that that's been a focus of mine, is drilling down on the fundamentals and making it as understandable as possible. So in terms of why I focus on bouquets, when I was coming up as a designer, like I mentioned, everything was a tight round ball. When I started my own business, because I worked as a professional freelancer for many years, I ran other people's retail shops. When I launched into my own business, I had a massive crisis, because even though I had this training and I thought, oh, I can totally start a business, I'm so, I have so much experience. It was a disaster. I knew how to design, but I did not know how to make money as a designer. I didn't realize that 85% of what I would be doing had nothing to do with designing. It had everything to do with all the bits and pieces of running a business, which I had no experience in doing. So I went through this very painful process of overstuffing, breaking stems, over ordering, emotionally ordering. I sort of lived all those lives. And, there was a point with my very supportive husband at the time, still my husband, thank goodness, who said, this is feeling a bit more like a hobby. And although that was painful to hear, because I, in my brain, thought, I am a professional, I can make this work. There was a huge disconnect between what I thought I knew and what I was actually doing. And it was so critical to have this humbling experience break me of understanding that it's not as easy as it looks to design flowers profitably. And I loved hearing Lennie's presentation right now, and I'm really excited to hear her talk. We're very aligned. I see why Deborah invited us. So I feel like we could probably give each other's presentation because it all had to come back to the fundamentals of running a business and the fundamentals of good design. And in that process, what I saw is a lot of designers struggling with the basics, even really talented established designers not having a process, just kind of winging it, over ordering, oh, we'll figure that out later. And this kind of chaotic process is where it hits the bottom line over and over and over. And I'm, pretty severe ADD. I'm like full, just every day is different. I'm not like a structured businessy person. But what I realized on the design side is that money can be saved and profit can be grown if I think more strategically about what I order and how I'm going to use it. And then this really took me back into having to go back to thinking about color, shape, and size. I love what Lennie just shared, because this is what I teach designers to think about: color, shape, and size over variety. So when Lennie was talking about foxglove and snapdragons, these are line flowers, right? You don't need 40 different line flowers. You need one, maybe two. In that ordering process, you are designing that component. You're deciding on how you're going to solve that design problem. That's a huge part of what we do, is figuring out what you're going to grow in terms of color, shape, and size. Now, Lennie, I'll leave that to the expert, but I've taught and trained a lot of flower farmers and growers of all different levels. And when I walk them through my own process of thinking about color theory and about shape, it's really helped them understand for their field and to think about flowers in color, shape, and size, rather than, well, I just really love this thing and I want to have it. If you're not a grower, I'm not a grower. I live in a townhouse in Virginia that's way overpriced, and I have 0 yard, and I don't grow anything. So I've always bought my flowers from people who grow or from wholesalers. And I still consider my purchasing, though, the same way. I'm looking at color, shape, and size. Once I have that order, really that problem solved, then solving it is much simpler, because I'm using a technique of deciding how much of what needs to go into a design. I'm using the fundamental spiral mechanic. I did not come up with it. European spiral has been around for hundreds of years. And in Europe, that's what they all do. They have buckets and buckets of flowers. They throw everything in a gorgeous spiral and out the door it goes. You can make small, medium, large. You can use them for installs. You can put them on funeral caskets. You can use this technique for so many things, vase arranging. And so I'm getting to my point of promise. As I started traveling around the country teaching, and as I started seeing and experiencing what designers were working on and what they were really stuck in, bouquet making consistently was a problem. They weren't considering what they were actually ordering. It was really rose heavy or really heavy mass bloom heavy. They didn't have enough line. They didn't have enough small mass blooms. And then the technique, there's all this crisscrossing and over taping and all this excess mechanics that's completely unnecessary. It can add weight and too much structure, and it can be a huge headache for people to cover all these mechanics and make these really clunky tree trunk, handles. And I thought, wow, there's so much training that's needed on the way that this can be so much easier and faster and more profitable. And so I sort of developed this program, this course, this workshop on bouquet making that talked about how to order, how to think about order, how to think about your color, the fundamentals of step-by-step, how this mechanic works, how to do it efficiently. And I just started seeing incredible results. I had people who had never made bouquets making them in minutes and training their teams to make them in minutes, and having people say, it took me 2 hours to make a bridal and I made this in 15 minutes. And what I saw over many years is that this affected the bottom line of every business, because their labor costs, like Lennie was saying, could be brought way down, as well as their product usage was way less. They weren't breaking as many stems. They weren't doing all this crazy crisscross and, prayers that it would all hold together. They were able to quickly, efficiently make market wraps, retail bouquets, vase arrangements, bridal. And for a lot of growers and farmers, they oftentimes, my experience has been, there's a little insecurity. Oh, I'm not a designer. I just grow them. Like, I hear that a lot. And it's like, well, why not? Why can't you learn this technique and bring a new stream of revenue into your business by selling bridal bouquets? You have a fields full of flowers. I have to go to a wholesaler and buy 10 stem bunches. You can make something and sell it for $225. And, create that revenue stream. And I'll let Lennie let you know if that's a good idea for your business. But, this has been an area that some designers or growers or flower farmers want to go into. They don't have the confidence to take it past the market wrap. And that's really what I love showing, is that the technique is the same. Where to layer those stems and what you choose to put in that bouquet is what changes it and elevates it, and also how it's marketed and how it's packaged. And so for the purpose of this presentation at Slow Flowers, I'm really going to be focusing on proving to the 100 or so growers and attendees that the spiral is a critical tool in every person's toolbox as a pathway to profitability. That learning this, teaching your team, I could teach my 9-year-old how to do this, right? There's really just a methodology. And once you have that pattern down, stem selection and the technique together can really improve your efficiency. And so, when Deborah first asked me to speak at this and kind of told me about what we were talking about, I said, this is so in alignment with what I'm focusing on, which is we're in this sort of tumultuous economy. We don't know what's going to happen. Florists have, we've suffered through some tough and, downturns before. Our prices are so high to do business. Our labor costs are higher than ever. The only true thing we can change is how we work. We can change how we buy, and we can change our process. If we can be more efficient, we can potentially salvage a lot of difficulty that we may be up against over the next year, 2 years. Who knows what's going to happen? And so I think this is hopefully going to be very empowering to say, you know, this might seem simple. You might even already do it. But what I want to demonstrate is really sort of the flexibility of this technique, that you can take it here, take it here, take it here. And it really expands your confidence as a grower, as a designer, in all the different applications of the technique. And so I'm going to be showing several pre-done bouquets, and then I'm also going to be doing a demonstration for you. And you will have lots of flowers, it sounds like, on hand. So I hope some of you can practice that and really learn possibly a new way to save time and money in your business, and possibly, you know, just really elevate your skills if you desire that. So that's a lot. I've been fire hosing.
I love it. I love it. You guys are like bookends, and it truly will be like this because after our initial presentation from James Gagliardi and Joseph Abkin, who are with the Bellevue Botanical Garden, who are going to orient us about place and why we're there. Lennie will be our morning speaker, and Amy will be our end of day speaker. So it's perfect. Good. Just I feel like I'm so genius asking the two of you to come. Amy, before we wrap up, thank you so much for that. It's very inspiring. And when I took your 1 hour class, or maybe it was an hour and a half, what I was most struck by was your commentary about how to be beautiful and economical at the same time. I'm not putting it correctly, but like you gave tips on not overstuffing your bouquet, but still getting that voluptuous, lush look. And I'm just wondering, is there like I don't know, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3? Like, do you, when you look at your whole order, are you trying to have equal numbers of line, mass, and filler, or like how do you save money when you're ordering?
That's such a meaty question. I'm going to try to answer it.
You have 6 minutes.
So I'm so glad you asked it, because it's such an important question. What you're really asking is, how do you solve the design problem? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, you solve it differently for different things, right? If my goal, say you have a bumper crop, and Lennie, please correct me if I'm wrong on the sidebar, but if you have a bumper crop of a lot of line flowers and your mass flowers, your round, big, fluffy, high petal count stuff, it didn't perform, you're going to be making a high ratio of line, right? You're going to be putting more snapdragons, more foxglove with maybe some filler. If you are doing a wedding, that's totally based on the client's desire. They may come to you with big, fluffy, high petal count, roses, peonies, and they want this. And you're like, well, I grow stock and snapdragons. You have to make it work, right? And there has to be communication with that client about, if they want to use you, what's a kind of a middle point around what you grow versus what they want. And I know a lot of growers that bring in flowers from other places that can supplement, especially in wedding work. This is really the big question, is how do you solve that design problem? There's 4 key categories, according to the American Institute of Floral Design: line, mass, form, and filler. And by understanding how to look at these shapes of what you grow and what you need to buy, this is really where I solve the problem. I usually use a Google Doc. I'm very OG. I actually use the Mayish Flower Library. I was up late last night using it to fix something for an upcoming order. And I literally just log into that library. It's totally free. And I scroll through color. I shop by color first. And I'm looking for, that's a big line, that's a small line. Typically for my particular style, there's 1 to 2 line flowers in every bouquet. That's the one tip I would give a lot of designers who are trying to make more open form work that feels gathered and loose and airy, is that oftentimes they don't incorporate enough line, and they don't incorporate enough small flowers or form flowers, meaning star shapes like clematis, hellebore. Those things need to float. I have a little adage, form flowers float. So they need to float above your mass blooms. This is how you create air and space and lightness. If you only order dense round blooms, your bouquets, your work will be round and dense. So the reality is it really is solved at that ordering level. And I'm working on a resource that I hopefully can include in Bouquet Bootcamp, that I'm just trying to work out how to help designers solve that problem more quickly, and be able to think about these 3 specific layers in a bouquet, and that they can more easily look at what they have and say, okay, I've got sedum, I've got Queen Anne's lace. Those are very flat-headed filler. Where do I put that? Where do I put that level 1, level 2, level 3? And the reality is it's not a perfect science. Your style when you make something is going to be different than how I do it, or Jan, or Erica, or Susie, right? There's a stylistic component also to how we're solving that design problem. So I wish I had a really easy canned answer, but I think that's kind of the magic of what we do as well, is that we're all going to be given possibly the same ingredients. And my bouquet, as you saw in the class you took with me, everyone's bouquet looked different, right? And the stem counts and even the preparation of those stems was all the same, and everyone looked a little different. And so I think the more observation we can make and understand what it is we're looking at, and being able to actually think about design in this way, it just allows us to be more successful and intentional with how we work.
I love it. That sounds great. This has been so helpful. Lennie talked about her upcoming workshop. I know, Amy, you've got a full calendar of workshops. Tonley was going to add your Portland workshop, which is right after the Slow Flower Summit. Were you going to put that on the screen, Tonley? So this is on June 30th. So it's the following, it's just the end of the week after the Slow Flower Summit, right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay.
And this workshop is, a really deep, intensive 6.5 hours. We go basically half of it is all in depth on color theory. It is meaty, it is dense. There's a mini course that I asked designers to go through ahead of time. We have a lot of growers and flower farmers that come through this. And the color theory section is really focused on how to look at color, how to put colors together, how to harmonize palettes. And we really dive into ratio. How much red should you put in something? How much yellow or orange and so forth? So how to create that balance. And then the second half is really focused on hands-on bouquet techniques. So we do binding and all the different techniques that I'm going to be demonstrating on stage. You would be able to do those in person. So we have, I think, 8 seats left for the tour in Portland, which is, and then the only other West Coast locations are in California at the end of the year.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, let's see. We have one more question and then we'll wrap it up and say goodbye. But before we do, I'm also going to say we have another giveaway, which is a set of note cards. And I don't know if some of you've been seeing these. I've been posting photos of my do-over bouquets from Slow Flowers, the book that came out 10 years ago. And Amy Stewart, the fabulous Amy Stewart, has illustrated 4 of them and given me permission to make them in a note card. So that set is going to go out to somebody else too. Lennie and Amy, Jackie Serber has a question, which is she'd love to know which dried flowers do you see people designing with for successful integration into their designs? She's going to donate a box to the Slow Flower Summit. She's going to be at the summit. So anything on your wish list that you'd love to use or see people, or that you're seeing people use?
Amy's probably more in touch with this than I am, but I would say dried grasses. It might be kind of a simple answer, but I think that trend is still around the pale tan flowers, and dried grasses can be so beautiful. Northern sea oats are my favorite thing in the world. I don't grow them anymore. I need to establish a new patch, but that's what I would say.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, I totally second that. And they can be easily incorporated with fresh by simply taping them with floral tape that can sort of protect the stem when sitting in water. And also any type of dried hydrangea. I think that just having a big chunky mass for even installation work or, wreath making, all of that, even low centerpieces can be just a great large mass. But I agree that grasses are still around, and I think they're going to continue to still be around.
Yeah, both of those are great suggestions too. Thank you both so much. This has been delightful. We will see you on June 26th and 27th in Seattle at the Slow Flowers Summit. I will say that we're going to have a special ticket promotion for Pacific Northwest Slow Flowers members that we're going to announce next week, just to get people off the, off the waiting list and commit, because we're running out of spaces. So look for that. And next month, we are going to have our last meetup of the spring, and it's going to be on June 9th. And our third keynote speaker, Julio Freitas of the Flower Hat, will be joining us and giving us a preview of what he's going to talk about at the Slow Flower Summit. So Amy and Lennie teased us today, and we'll get a little bit from Julio next month, and then we'll see you at the summit. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Amy, good travels, and we'll see you soon. And Lennie, I know you're only a few hours away, so I'm excited that you're going to be driving. We'll talk soon, and thank you both so much. This has been delightful.